Greetings from Costa Rica, folks, and welcome to Friday's live Costa Rica real estate broadcast. We're talking about the basics of Costa Rica real estate today because, frankly, it's been a long time since I addressed some of the most fundamental questions that people have when they contact me to discuss Costa Rica real estate. The questions that we're going to cover today are going to involve some of the most basic principles. Can foreigners own and buy property here in Costa Rica? We're going to quickly go over how the real estate market works, given that we don't have an MLS, nor that we have licensing for agents here. We're also going to go over whether or not foreigners need corporations to buy or own property. We're going to cover property taxes. I'm going to try and quickly address security and answer the question, is Costa Rica safe? In the same way that I answer it when people call me up and they want to know more information. We're also going to go over pricing in Costa Rica real estate and how that is established, because one of the most frequent things I hear is that, oh boy, it sounds like agents just throw numbers at walls and they have no idea where the pricing comes from. So I want to give important info as to how you can determine the fairness of pricing. You can actually understand the process by which realtors should be able to come up with a price for you. It's Friday afternoon here, folks. I hope you've had a lovely week. If you want to reach out directly to me, you can email me at matt@costaricamatt.com. As always, my experience and everything I talk about here on my channel is based on my 16 years living and working in Guanacaste near Playa Junquial. I'm a realtor and I serve clients in the area of Western Guanacaste that extends from Playa Potrero all the way 2 hours north of where I'm sitting, down to Marbella about 2 hours south of where I'm sitting, depending on the road conditions. So if you are interested in Playa Tamarindo, Playa Grande, Langosta, Potrero, all of those areas are within my bailiwick, and I'd be more than happy to help you evaluate your real estate options in those locations. Speaking of real estate options, if you want the be-all, end-all VBook resource that will help you answer a lot more real estate questions besides just the basics of today, you can visit CostaRicaMatt.com and request my VBook. You will see a huge blue button that says VBook on it. Click it, fill out the form. It should take you 15 seconds, and you will be rewarded with a 19 or 20 video playlist containing some of my best real estate information, as well as some of the other stuff I talk about. Everything from cultural issues to all of the fun stuff that we cover here on Costa Rica Matt. Finally, before we get started here, I just wanted to give one more cheers quickly to my clients, the people who reach out to me and decide to hire me to be their realtor. So glad to have people like Kurt and George out there. Who else should I throw shout outs to today? Dimitri's giving me the surprised look. It's the people who would never watch my broadcast whatsoever. Bill anyway, from Las Brisas, thanks very much for the opportunity to help you sell your condo. Let's get started here, folks, on the basics of Costa Rica real estate. With our first question, can foreigners buy and own property in Costa Rica? And the very short answer is yes, in 99% of the land in Costa Rica. Foreigners can purchase property here. You can own it outright. There's no time limit to how long you can own it. There is actually, you do not have to have residency in order to buy property here. And one of the things that most frequently comes up that foreigners will ask here is whether or not they need a corporation in order to hold the property in their names here in Costa Rica. No, you do not need a corporation. Foreigners can buy property directly in their names without any kind of residency here in Costa Rica. And the government has one single national registry that is really the database, the title system that gives you clear, transparent ownership of all of the titled property here in Costa Rica. There are exceptions to that answer. Foreigners cannot own land that is in the zona maritima, or right on the beach within 150 meters of the high tide line, because that area can only be leased unless it's titled, and there's some very small amounts of land that is actually titled on the beachfront. That zona maritima is supposed to be controlled by Costa Ricans or foreigners who have permanent residency for 5 years. That's the one exception. So if you're looking directly at beachfront property or property that's very close to the water, Costa Rica law states that if it is in the concession lease zone, that should be controlled by Costa Ricans and not directly in the hands of foreigners. And in that area, you'd find the one place where you can't just directly own property. Aside from that, if you're not looking at beachfront property, yes, foreigners can buy property here. Now, how does our real estate market work? Yes, you've heard there's no MLS, there is no licensing for realtors. And so people are really at a loss for understanding what they should do in approaching the property purchasing process. That was a mouthful, sorry. To begin with, let's start out by distinguishing between the real estate market that Costa Ricans are generally involved in and this expat foreigner real estate market that I'm talking about, just to make sure we're clear on that note. And then within the expat market, the people coming down to buy property as a foreigner, really, I think there's two different ways to understand the real estate market here, and those are going to be the locations where there are a lot of foreigners moving, or rather quickly to just call them the touristy locations, versus the rest of Costa Rica where it's not really touristy and you still find Costa Rican life largely unchanged by foreigners. If you're somebody who's looking at this expat real estate market in touristy areas, one of the important things to understand is that because there are so many foreigners purchasing in that area, there's been sort of a real estate profession and system that's been developed specifically to cater to your needs and to make the process feel more like what you see in the United States, Canada, and other countries. In those touristy areas, if that's where you want to move, the real estate market can actually look a lot more like the United States market than you might expect. For example, in Tamarindo, our Realtors Association here, we've been working hard on establishing an MLS that includes all of the professionals in this area. That MLS is not perfect, it's not complete, but honestly, for Tamarindo real estate and for listings that are current in that market, it's getting pretty darn good. And in addition to that MLS, the association is creating licensing procedures. They're having ethics procedures. You're really starting to see a lot of formality built up around the markets where there are a lot of foreigners investing. So if you're coming down and you're thinking, I just want a 2-bedroom condo in a market like Jaco or Tamarindo or Potrero, you can expect to find a trustworthy realtor. Yes, you can expect to find one after you've done the usual due diligence and actually tried to find someone with a good reputation. You can actually find a realtor that has certifications. Those certifications are non-obligatory. They're offered through, third-party associations. But you can definitely find professionals who are dedicated to helping foreigners buy real estate in those areas. They should actually have decent data to work with, whether it's our MLS here in Guanacaste or whether it's their local knowledge in Jaco or somewhere south. And you should be able to have a pretty formal, typical buying and selling process where you're going to make an offer with a refundable deposit, you're going to have a due diligence period, and things are going to look like the US process a lot. Now, in those real estate markets, yes, there's no licensing. When you are seeking a realtor or someone to help you with this process, you can absolutely use other sources of information, whether they have those associations, certifications or not. Really, you want to use local reputations, reviews, try and find out more about that person who's working in real estate and get a full picture, because yes, you will meet some realtors who work with major brands who have very little experience. And on the other hand, you'll find some of the absolute best real estate professionals in the country, the people who give truly ethical advice and put their clients' interests first. You will find them working for banana real estate company, or not even in a real estate brokerage themselves, working in some informal sort of scenario. So more than anything, since we don't have clear licensing, it's up to buyers and sellers to find good people to work with and engage the people who are actually going to be professional. Now, let's talk about if you want to go into those areas where it's not touristy and you're really entering more of just the local Costa Rica market. Yes, things work extremely in a different fashion. You're going to have difficulty find dedicated real estate professionals. You're going to have a difficulty finding a lot of formal websites with listings on them. And in those areas outside of the tourism markets, you're really going to be reliant on sort of doing a ground-based local search where you start out calling, say vende signs, which means for sale in Spanish. You're going to ask a lot of people in town what's for sale and what's available. In those areas outside of the tourism markets, you're definitely going to see that you just need to do a ton of research, try and find stakeholders who can help you understand the area better, and you're going to be somewhat out on your own to navigate the Costa Rica market. You do have to have a Costa Rica public notary or attorney here in the country that is the person who closes your transaction as a buyer. That attorney is separate from the person who has helped you identify the real estate you want to buy. And they're also separate from the negotiating process. Again, to go back to those tourism areas, when you work with a realtor, and absolutely you should find somebody who represents only your interests in order to proceed through purchasing real estate here. In those touristy areas, you will also need a public notary who's going to help you close the transaction. The notary's responsibilities are going to be focused on the legal due diligence, helping you understand the title, making sure that the property is free and clear and that there are no possible liabilities. The attorney has no idea what the price should be. They really don't know whether or not that's a good neighborhood, and they're not going to be the one that's responsible for guiding you on choosing the real estate overall. So although they are 100% required to help seal the deal legally, the Costa Rica public attorney or the public notary is your legal deal closer. They are not the person who is going to help and get you out there looking at real estate. So should you find an exclusive buyer's representative, or are there exclusive seller's representatives? Absolutely, the answer is yes to both questions. I know a ton has changed about the way US real estate works. You no longer have that clear buyer relationship or buyer's agent relationship. Most of the formally listed properties in those tourism areas where a lot of foreign investors are moving have a buyer's and seller's agent commission included in the asking price. If you're looking at Tamarindo real estate and the price of a condo is $450,000, you can assume that you could hire your own realtor to go talk to that seller's realtor, and the $450,000 ask price includes money to pay your buyer's realtor. Yes, I say to people a lot, You don't necessarily need a realtor in the strict definition of that term in Costa Rica. We don't have licensing, so realtors, by the strict meaning of that term, are fewer and further between. You do, however, really need somebody who knows your market, knows the neighborhoods, knows the liabilities, and knows all of the answers to those questions that you don't as a foreigner. And whether that is a realtor or just some person you've met and who actually has your interests at heart, you do need an exclusive representative to help you through the process of buying real estate. Sellers here are generally still signing up for exclusive listing agreements. In many areas of the country where there are tourist markets, you frequently see those exclusive listing agreements. Those exclusive listing agreements do include the buyer's agent commission. Everywhere else in the country, outside of those tourism areas, you can assume that you're going to find a lot of for sale by owner situations where the seller didn't necessarily include a commission in their asking price, or when they say their asking price to somebody, they're telling you the net amount of money that they want in their pocket to sign a transfer deed, not some asking price that's out there to be negotiated with commissions and all this and that included. So if you were looking in those informal or those areas outside of tourism markets, yes, I would still find an exclusive buyer's representative, and I would figure out before you go see properties exactly what your arrangement is going to be on the commission front. Establish things clearly with this person. You know, we're going to see for sale by owners, we're going to see other listings, etc. I will make sure you get paid, for example, a 3% buyer's agent commission in order to have their exclusive representation, or for the buyer to work, or for you to work exclusively with them. Forgot from which perspective I was telling that. Let's keep moving on. So, what are property tax rates in Costa Rica? The short answer is that almost everyone will be subject to a tax rate that is 0.25% of one of two numbers. That will be either your property's purchase price or the registered municipal assessed value, whichever is higher. In 99% of transactions that have recently closed here, the property tax rate that I've seen foreigners stuck with after the transaction is their purchase price, because very often that assessed value from the municipality is going to be lower. So that's 0.25%. That is your property tax base here in Costa Rica. You have all probably heard about the luxury tax as well. And when you read information online, it can be very difficult to understand it because it says, well, the luxury tax can be between 0.25% and 0.5% of the total value of the asset. Well, what's that percentage based on? That 0.25 to 0.5% is actually based on a complex table where a luxury appraisal is done. The square meters of construction are put in, the types of finishes, the floors, everything is put into this formula. And that formula spits out a value for the house itself without the land value included. So it will have referenced the local land value table, looked at your land deed, and taken out your land price. It will then have calculated a value for the home. Now, the luxury tax then, if your home value according to the table comes out at $350,000, yes, at that point, you are subject to the luxury tax if the equation gave you an answer that is more than $250,000. That $350,000 value of your home has different tranches where 0.1% tax rate is applied to the first amount, 0.2% to the second amount, and progressively, so that a higher tax rate is applied to those higher tranches of the property price, where it's, I think, officially capped. The top one is 0.55 or something like that. But regardless, I tell people if they're looking at a home and your closing price is in the $500,000 range, if it's a home with a lot of land, you are most likely not going to be subject to the luxury tax, because that land value is a major component of the overall property value. Really, only when I see people buying condos that have nice finishes, that are priced above $500,000, or when they're buying homes in the $1 million and up range, that you can be certain that the luxury tax is going to apply, and that they might have something additional in addition to the municipal tax, which again was 0.25% of either the purchase price or the municipally assessed value. One moment, please. Refreshing. Aside from that, taxes in Costa Rica, when people obviously want to know what the closing costs are when they purchase a property. That's a total of 4% to pay your attorney, the notary who represents the buyer at closing, and the transfer taxes, stamps, and everything to close the transaction itself. Next, let's move on to a whopping big question. Is Costa Rica safe? And quickly, it'll be very tough to answer this question, but the way that I always start addressing it with everyone who asks is that, first of all, just like the United States or Canada or France or Greenland, everywhere has very safe places, and everywhere is going to have places that are patently dangerous. Yes, if you have been watching the recent news in Costa Rica, there are security concerns. Homicides happening between rival drug cartels in a couple locations of the country have shot up ever since, I think it was really 2 years ago or 18 months ago, that they really started seeing that increase in what is sort of a conflict between different cartels. And if you're reading the general Costa Rica security news, it can look pretty grim. Especially in the Facebook groups, you'll always hear, this or that house had been broken into, etc. And in almost every circumstance, first and foremost, you can see that clearly in Costa Rica, there are those safe locations and there are high-risk locations. The cities of Punta Arenas and Limón, which are the two ports in Costa Rica, and the country's capital, San Jose, are three urban places that are natural centers of where you see the worst crime in the country. Now, out in the rural areas, everywhere between them, I feel confident telling people that Costa Rica is absolutely safe. However, you'll find that even in the prettiest, quietest rural areas, there is an opportunist who might want to take a laptop or a cell phone or some free cash at the first easy opportunity. And the crime of opportunity that you see up and down the tourism areas does become pretty frequent, because those opportunities are also frequently available. Personally, I get frustrated every time in our community pages that somebody posts that they had any valuables stolen from a car. The only way to prevent valuables from being stolen in cars will be to not leave valuables in cars, whether it's Costa Rica and whether it's San Jose at 2 a.m. or whether it's my quiet little beach parking lot here, at 4 in the afternoon when there are lots of people. There will also be sneak-ins, people stealthily coming into apartments, homes, whatever's open to take easily available valuables constantly, as long as these opportunities are out there. I live in a home that has a very interesting security setup, and I am thankful to say that after 12 years here in Costa Rica, my wife and I have still never had any issues apart from one of my neighbors stealing our eggs from the chicken coop. I actually am going to be doing a more in-depth analysis of security in Costa Rica and discussing how we're able to do that and include it in my V-book, which again is available at costaricamat.com. I'm trying to pull up the thing here. That chapter, I'll be doing a deeper discussion of how we're able, or how I feel that we've been able to avoid any issues so far, the real scenario, etc. Suffice it to say that yes, crime of opportunity happens everywhere and frequently in Guanacaste, and especially in tourism areas. The huge aggressive crimes that you're seeing do occasionally happen throughout the country as well, even in our quiet communities. And no matter what, your Costa Rica security strategy is going to involve a mixture of common sense, privacy, and actual preparation. I think one of the biggest things that most people might be unprepared for in Costa Rica is to actually have to take responsibility for yourself. People come from the US and Canada, and for example, we've had problems at beaches where there might not be a sign warning people not to swim at a certain tide. They get in the water, something tragic happens, and it's unbelievable that there wasn't better markings, that they didn't have a rope around the beach preventing somebody from making a bad decision. Yes, here in Costa Rica, they don't have the immediate response times from the police departments that you'd see in the United States. There are certain things that people have to do to make sure their home stays secure. And yes, a lot of it is just being private. A ton is not flashing your valuables and leaving them vulnerable in the first place. And again, I will be discussing it further in my V-book here as soon as I can record that video after I finish today. So overall, I still feel I am safe in Costa Rica. My family is safe in Costa Rica. I am taking steps every day to make sure that I never have someone sneak into my house at a random time and steal the laptops, the cameras, the different stuff that makes my livelihood possible. So that's my short answer on whether or not Costa Rica is safe. The sub-question to that people always ask me in real estate is, do I need to be in a gated community? I look at your security solution and being safe in Costa Rica as a multi-pronged strategy. A gated community is a great prong in that strategy, or a great element of your overall security strategy. However, you can't just build a home in a 4,000 acre wide open gated community that has barbed wire fences along most of it, then leave tens of thousands of dollars of cash, or have this kind of really you can't do absolutely stupid things even if you're in a very secure gated community. At the same time, you can live with your doors open, with laptops on the table, with no concern whatsoever for security if you're in a private enough location, or simply put, no one has any idea what's available and what's going on at your place. So I still continue to feel very safe here. I don't like seeing that, yes, security is a concern and only a growing one, but I'm definitely gonna stay in my situation and make the adjustments I feel, rather than feeling any sense of insecurity in my home. Let's get back to real estate here and wrap up talking about real estate prices. And oftentimes people are gonna look at this Guanacaste real estate market, or whatever tourism market they're looking at, and yes, without an MLS, they wonder, how can a realtor possibly come up with these prices? And you may very often see that prices seem like realtors threw something against a wall. And actually, I will say, it can very often seem like sellers threw something at a wall. And yes, it does very often happen. One of the listings that I've had so much fun watching was a luxury home in a community outside of Mar Vista that started with a listing price above $7 million. My most recent price, this was over 2 years ago, or maybe 18 months, that sort of time range. And now the most recent price reduction that we received on that house was down to 3.9. I even remember, and I hate to give my colleagues a little flack, but one of my colleagues publishing a video on the house when it had been reduced to 5.2. And the video was, this house at this price isn't going to last long on the market. So yes, especially in the luxury market, sellers occasionally will absolutely throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. As a buyer, to understand how realtors should come up with pricing, a lot of it has to do with picking the right realtor. An experienced realtor in Guanacaste who has seen the upcycle and the down can give you historic information that your newbie realtor is not going to be able to do. And a lot of times you can examine listing prices very quickly by directly grilling the realtor on where they came up with it. An agent here in Guanacaste should be able to look you in the eye and say, let's take an example for that luxury house in a luxury community. Here were the recent closing prices for these lots. The similar piece of land. Here are the construction prices for similar homes per square foot. And when I combine these two to get a rough replacement cost of the home, this is about how much the replacement cost was. And then I adjusted that price based on how much was on the market, how quickly things were selling, etc. There are plenty of realtors in Guanacaste and throughout Costa Rica who can actually do that. And if you're contacting people trying to figure out where listing prices stand, you should absolutely be trying to figure out who the person is that came up with that price and get their method behind it. Most often you're gonna see that replacement cost was the beginning. They should also, in many circumstances, be able to cite at least a couple of data points. Realtors will often only have 2 or 3 comps to be able to base their price on. And honestly, I don't think you should be hesitant to buy real estate if there are only 2 good comps. This is an extremely small real estate market with fewer transactions happening, and realtors frequently might be only able to say, look, in the last 2 years, as a great example, in Tierra Pacifica, the neighborhood next door to my office, there are 45 total homes built. And even in a hot year, we may only see 3 or 4 of those change hands. There isn't a comparable neighborhood anywhere in this area. And so if I want to tell somebody the comparable price for a 3-bedroom home there, like I recently tried to do, I only had 3 homes over the last 2 years that were comparable in size to the home being analyzed. So those 3 data points, and that was a lucky scenario where I've done all the transactions recently, I know the neighborhood, and I was able to get 3 data points. You may see plenty of circumstances where people are only able to say, well, there are a couple homes that were very similar that have recently sold. You will also see a lot of realtors setting their prices based on what's on the market. And absolutely, you're right to have red alarm bells go off in your head. And whereas, people can price things wherever the market is asking, you do want to know where things are closing. And in interviewing your realtors, your agents, to go through this whole process, if they're not able to back up the pricing on what they see, whether it's their listing or someone else's, you need to start looking for a new agent. So anyhow, folks, that's been some of the basics of Costa Rica real estate. Been a pleasure. I'll be back next Friday. As always, we have some extremely beautiful luxury homes that we'll be bringing to the market here. Can't wait to talk about those. Thanks very much for joining me today. Have a great weekend. Salud to everybody out there, and I look forward to hearing from you.